South Park has been around longer than about half of my viewers, but the show really hasn't been the same since Chef left. He was legit my favorite character, and his departure, it kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, as it did for many people. But what if I told you the story of how Chef left South Park is much darker than how it played out? And yes, on screen, Chef was set on fire, he fell into a canyon, he was eaten by lions and a bear, and then he shot himself. It's even darker than that. Chef is the character. Isaac Hayes was the actor. R.I.P. Isaac Hayes. In this video, I will fill you in on every layer of the story. The initial South Park episode about Scientology that supposedly upset Isaac Hayes so much that he publicly quit. And then I'll tell you what the actor's son, Isaac Hayes III, said really happened. Plus, what was the reaction of Trey Parker and Matt Stone when they learned the true reasons? This isn't just a bunch of celebrity gossip mixed in with millennial nostalgia. This is cult control in action, in public, in front of our eyes. And the publicity didn't change the outcome at all, at all. It ends with tragic consequences for Hayes. R.I.P. Now, I'm going to be reading from this Cracked article, which came out last month. It is by Brian Van Hooker, which apparently is his real name. I don't know. Either way, it's linked down below. I'm also reading for this Hollywood Reporter article, which they reference in the Cracked article. It's from 7 years ago. Also, this Fox News article, which came out right after it happened in 2006, and an AV Club interview with Isaac Hayes himself from January of 2006. First and foremost, if you do not know what South Park is, I can't help you, but I'm still gonna try. South Park is an animated show about 4 school-age boys who live in this tiny little Colorado town. At the time of its inception, way back in the 90s, it was incredibly edgy, and it's managed to maintain some of that, although some seasons are better than others, let's be honest. They just signed a deal with Paramount for $1.5 billion and 50 more episodes. And for some reason, they get away with political commentary that would have gotten a lot of other people canceled. Yeah, some fringe people do say stuff like this, but they're not fringe, they're mainstream. And they've sort of managed to stay immune to the social witch hunts of the 2010s. And that alone is worth $1.5 billion at least. So it's on its 27th season and it still has hits and we still watch it, which is more than I can say for other animated shows that have outlived about 90% of Opium addicts. I'm not going to name any names. Anyway, for the first third of South Park, there was this character called Chef and he was the cook at the school cafeteria. And the kids, they came to him for advice. It was so sweet. And what I liked about Chef is that he was genuinely concerned about the children, but he was also a grown-ass man trying to smash older ladies in the town. Still, he knew that wasn't appropriate for young kids, so he tried to guide them as best he could. And he said children in the absolute most endearing way possible.
Hello there, children.
Hey, Chef.
In my eyes, Chef was a main character in the show. It was like the boys and then their parents and Chef all in the same line. And there's a reason for that because Isaac Hayes was a known actor and everybody else was unknowns when the show came out. And that's a big deal. But he left after they aired that episode called Trapped in the Closet, which made fun of Scientology. Apparently, Hayes had joined the Church of Scientology in the 1990s. Now, Trapped in the Closet aired in the 9th season, and it has Stan take this personality test, and his thetan rating is so high that they think that he is the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard, who is the Church of Scientology's founder. You should actually watch that movie called The Master, but that's a different video. Anyway, Tom Cruise comes to visit Stan to be like, have I pleased you, Master? And Stan's like, you're an okay actor. So Tom Cruise goes into the closet and he won't come out of the closet. That's why it's called Trapped in the Closet. And the president of Scientology, of the Church of Scientology, begs Stan to take the throne. He tells him about the teachings of Scientology, the actual teachings about the thetans that are trapped in our bodies. And at the bottom, it says, this is what Scientology really believes, so you're not confused. And Stan, the character, says they should stop scamming people, and he admits to the crowd that he is not the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard, and this whole church is a grift. Now, the church members, they cannot accept the truth, and they get mad at Stan for telling the truth. Now, this is called cognitive dissonance, and it's the same psychological principle that has people double down on a cult after their prophecies fail to materialize. I could do a whole episode on cognitive dissonance, but South Park did it in like half a scene. Just to let you know, cognitive dissonance is the mental torment people feel when they're trying to hold two conflicting ideas in their mind. The term can be traced back to the 1950s with a psychologist named Leon Festinger, and he was studying a cult that predicted the end of the world. These members, they left their jobs, they left their families, they sold their possessions, and it's because this cult leader called Mrs. Quiche predicted that the world would end in a flood and her followers would be saved on board a flying saucer. Surprise, surprise, that did not happen. Well, some left the cult after this prediction, but others doubled down and they went to the newspapers and they started giving their testimony, telling other people they should join as well. They would talk to anyone who would listen. And Festinger theorized that they were getting more social capital to make up for the fact that their predictions did not come true. Now, do I feel bad for these people? Absolutely not, because they wanted the whole world to die so they can go fly off on a spaceship. So, them. Anyway, that is where this term comes from. That's a little footnote for this story, cognitive dissonance. And we saw that at the end of Trapped in the Closet. Now, that episode initially aired November 16th, 2005. And it was great. There wasn't a big stink about it. And I remember thinking when I watched it, I was like, cool. They did the same things with the Mormons in season 7. That's actually how I learned how the Mormons what they actually believe. And this is how I learned what Scientologists actually believe. And I got to learn that without spending thousands of dollars and many years in that stupid cult. Oh, when you move to LA, trust, Scientology is everywhere. It's everywhere. And a lot of people, they fall into it without even realizing it. I did go to one of those centers on Hollywood Boulevard and take their stupid cup test. It didn't end well for anybody. Not me, not the person giving it. I'm not going to bore you with it. I'm going to bore my Patreon because that's what they pay for. Anyway, back to the story. Keep this little bit of information in your head. The actor who played Chef, Isaac Hayes, he suffered a stroke on January 17th, 2006. And that is between the initial airing of Trapped in the Closet in November and the planned rebroadcast in March. It was supposed to be rebroadcast March 15th. Now, when the first episode went to air, it was no big deal. But when it went to air again in 2006, in March, people made a big stink. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. It was set to be rebroadcast March 15th, but it didn't because Isaac Hayes quit the show very publicly on March 13th. Now, the rebroadcast was replaced with Chocolate Salty Balls. That episode, it's a big hit. Chocolate Salty Balls was a viral hit before we had viral hits. And it was one of Isaac Hayes' more popular songs, especially of the younger generation. And he actually performed it in concert. You can look that up. I don't think I can actually play it for copyright reasons. Now, I am so old that I can actually remember why it matters that this wasn't rebroadcast. See, way back in the aughts, way in the early aughts, if you missed an episode of TV, you missed it. And maybe you got lucky and it re-aired. But 2006, that was early YouTube and that was early internet. So it just got online. People saw it on YouTube. It had so many hits on YouTube. And see, the older Scientology folks, they probably thought that if they could stop the rebroadcast, they could stop the episode. But the internet was like, oh no, we're going to see it anyway. So people just watched it at their convenience like we do now. It was a major technological shift that made a huge difference in this story. So why didn't Trapped in the Closet air March 15th as planned? Now, rumor has it that Tom Cruise actually stopped the rebroadcast and he threatened to pull any publicity promos he had with Paramount, whose parent company, Viacom, also owned Comedy Central. Tom Cruise and his people completely deny these rumors. They say it's absolutely insane to even think that that would happen because it is insane that a tiny little cult could control the media of a massive nation, a huge country, and therefore the world. Like, that's an insane thing to think. So Tom Cruise's people deny that, but the rumors persist. Comedy Central says that's not true about Tom Cruise. What actually happened is they're trying to honor Isaac Hayes, who quit the show on March 13th. This is the public statement he made to quit the show. There is a place in this world for satire, but there is a time when satire ends and intolerance and bigotry towards religious beliefs of others begins. Religious beliefs are sacred to people and at all times should be respected and honored. As a civil rights activist for the past 40 years, I cannot support a show that disrespects those beliefs and practices. Now, Trey and Matt responded with this. This is 100% having to do with his faith of Scientology. He has no problem and he's cashed plenty of checks with our show making fun of Christians. That show makes fun of Christians a lot. Jesus is a character. South Park gives it to everybody, even Islam, which a lot of people are afraid to do for obvious reasons. Everybody can get it. So Trey and Matt, they were shocked when Isaac Hayes quit the show over this because he wouldn't do it for any other religion. So that's hypocrisy. And they're like, okay, you can go. And so then they make an episode called The Return of Chef. And this was the first episode of season 10. So the next season, but it aired March 22nd, 2006. Remember, South Park is famous for only taking 6 days to make a show, from writing to production to air. 6 days to air, that was a documentary. Check that out. You're like, you know a little bit too much about South Park. It's fine. It doesn't matter. My husband's obsessed with it. Anyway, in The Return of Chef, first episode of season 10, Chef tried to molest the boys, but the boys know that Chef doesn't do that. Chef loves to glove down grown-ass women like Cartman's mom. So they get suspicious and they start to investigate. Now, it turns out that Chef has been taken in by the shadowy organization called the Super Adventure Club that promises him the world if he molests young boys. Does that sound familiar? I would like to point out that I have never heard that Scientology has above average molestation of children numbers. But from 2025, we think that, our elites are made up of these shadowy organizations that molest children. Anyway, the Super Adventure Club isn't a real club. So maybe they were onto something. Maybe they knew about something. Anyway, Chef chooses the shadowy organization over the boys. And as he's walking back, the bridge he's on, it collapses and he falls to his death. He falls into a canyon. He gets eaten by a lion and then a bear. And then to prove that he's dead, he shat himself, which was really funny. But I remember thinking at the time, well, this sucks. I like Chef. This can't be for real. Like, he's coming back. This is a joke, right? I mean, it was a joke, but he wasn't coming back. I just couldn't imagine that he would leave because of Scientology, considering the nature of the show. But fuck Scientology and any religion that's trying to suppress free speech. But here is the kicker. This is where it goes into conspiracy territory, but it's not really conspiracy territory. See, Isaac Hayes didn't seem to care much about the episode before his stroke, which was on January 17th, 2006. This is actually an interview from January 4th of 2006. Audio Video Club. There's some pretty harsh satire on South Park. They don't really care who they offend, Isaac Hayes, but that's their thing. Their success was built on that cutting edge stuff. I've had to defend them a lot of times. One time on BET, I defended them because Tavis Smiley, the host on that show, was coming at me. It was a call-in show too, so people were calling in. I told them not to take this stuff seriously. If you do, you'll get in trouble. Just enjoy it. Remember your high school yearbook? You look at those pictures now and laugh, right? That's what South Park is. You gotta laugh at it because we cursed, but we didn't dare let the principals, the teachers, and the preachers hear it. And we didn't turn out bad, okay? Just look at it that way. Also, usually there's some kind of moral message at the end for the kids by Chef. Audio Video Club. They did just do an episode that made fun of your religion, Scientology. Did that bother you? And this is what Isaac Hayes says. Well, I talked to Matt and Trey about that. They didn't let me know until it was done. I said, guys, you have it all wrong. We're not like that. I know that's your thing, but get your information correct because somebody might believe that shit, But I understand what they're doing. I told them to take a couple of Scientology courses and understand what we do. And then he laughed. And later, about 2 weeks after this interview came out, he had a stroke. And then he quit the show about 2 months after that. Trap in the Closet was set to air March 15th, but the rebroadcast never happened because of this drama. Now, to defend Isaac Hayes, that episode is absolutely the great secret of Scientology, but they don't let you know. They slow walk you into it until you reach the level necessary to learn about it. Now, Leah Remini, she has a show and she exposed this. They bring you into a room when you finally paid your thousands of dollars and alienated all your family, and then you read it and they don't let you take the book out of the room. So this is the sunk cost fallacy taken to the absolute extreme in manipulation. So Hayes may not have even been at that point. He may not have even known what South Park revealed about Scientology. I don't know what he knew. I'm just speculating here. But if everybody was being honest, he might not have known. Now, this is a Fox News article and it is from March 20th of 2006. It's by Roger Friedman. And this is before the Return of the Chef episode aired, but after Hayes had left the show. It says, Isaac Hayes did not quit South Park. My sources say that someone quit for him. I can tell you that Hayes is in no position to have quit anything. Contrary to news reports, the great writer, singer, and musician suffered a stroke on January 17th. At the time, it was said he was hospitalized and suffering from exhaustion. Now scroll down the article a little bit, you read more. Friends in Memphis tell me that Hayes did not issue any statements on his own about South Park. They are mystified. Quote from friends. Isaac's been concentrating on his recuperation for the last 2.5-3 months, a close friend told me. Hayes did not suffer paralysis, but the mild stroke may have affected his speech and his memory. He's been having home therapy since it happened. So this information was on public record almost as soon as it happened, just a week after Hayes quit the show. However, to defend the South Park guys, even if they did read the article the same day, which it was a different era, they probably didn't. How are they supposed to write and produce a new show in 2 days? They didn't. And I don't even know when they got word that Hayes was being manipulated or may have been manipulated by his Scientology handlers. It just says in articles that they found out later. We don't know how much later. So I can't really plot it on my Charlie board. Now look, in 2016, this was the South Park 20th anniversary. Isaac Hayes' son, Isaac Hayes III, he actually spoke on it. So this is his family coming forward to say this. And he said this, Isaac Hayes III. Isaac Hayes did not quit South Park. Someone quit South Park for him. What happened was that in January 2006, my dad had a stroke and lost the ability to speak. He really didn't have much comprehension and he had to relearn to play the piano and a lot of different things. He was in no position to resign under his own knowledge. At the time, everyone around my father was involved in Scientology, his assistants, the core group of people. So someone quit South Park on Isaac Hayes' behalf. We don't know who. Now, Matt Stone says, we sort of figured out the whole picture a bit later, but that's totally what happened. This is a picture of Isaac Hayes' son, the third. Now, I hate nepotism, but also I like to see my favorites kind of reborn young again. So it's like, oh, it's the same, but different. Anyway, I'm glad he's out here speaking for his father. And apparently, Isaac Hayes, he loves South Park and he performed Chocolate Salty Balls in concert. He loved that show. Now, the story does turn tragic, unfortunately. There was an article in Cracked this past month and was sort of a follow-up. Apparently, it hurt Isaac Hayes a lot to quit South Park because it was pulling in a lot of money for him and it didn't make any sense financially for him to quit. And he needed that money to live his lifestyle. And that was easy work. Now, this is from the Cracked article linked at the bottom. Isaac Hayes' son, Isaac Hayes III, he says this. At the time, the people around him were largely Scientologists, his publicist and management. Those decisions about his involvement in the show, his leaving the show, were made by people and not him. He would have never quit the show. He loved that show and he was making a lot of money doing that show. So I take issue with the way those decisions were made on his behalf because it put him in a position to actually have to go on the road and tour before he was ready to tour. This interview goes on. It says, when did he start touring again? It says probably less than a year afterwards because South Park was such a breadwinner. It was a great show and he was making money. So now that you don't have this income stream anymore, you have to find other ways to make income. Touring is a way to do that. Imagine you walk away from a gig and all you do is sit in front of a mic and talk. And to go back on the road and start learning to play and sing and perform and travel and stay up late in flights and all that kind of stuff, I took issue with that. My dad loved Matt and Trey. He loved that character. He loved the show. He loved what it meant. He would have stayed involved all the way until right now. To this day, he would still be on the show. That's the part that frustrates me. Now, there were many factors that his son names that may have contributed to Hayes' death. The other one was Scientology's stance on modern medicine. I don't know if you're familiar, but this is what the interview asks. So he died August 2008. Do you think him getting back on the road so quickly is what accelerated? And his son says, yes, 100%. And part of what I recall from Scientology is they weren't big on modern medicine. They were more into holistic things. So even the medication that he was probably supposed to be taking, he probably wasn't taking. All of those factors, you know what I'm saying? Which is why you have to be the biggest advocate for your health. My father was very big on holistic medicine and things like that. But at the same time, you have to be real and understand the science of what's going on. Whether it could be your blood pressure, your heart, your kidneys, to this day, I think this had a major effect on me and how I view my health. And the interviewer asked, did he ever talk to you about leaving South Park? He says, no, we never had conversations about that. Never. So to me, this points, from what his son said, this points clearly to Hayes being in a diminished capacity and being taken advantage of by those people who were supposed to care for him, those people around him, his Scientology handlers that were supposed to care for him. And what did they do? They made this decision on his behalf of put him back to work, touring to pay the bills. They may have also influenced him to not take his medicine that could have kept his blood pressure down and prevented another stroke. Now, Hayes, he died of a stroke August of 2008, so only 2 years after he left the show. He was only 65 years old. Now, I don't know what his life would have been if he never left the show, if he didn't have to tour, if he had taken his medicine. Maybe the results would have been the same. But in his son's world, in Isaac Hayes III's world, he would still be on South Park to this day if the handlers hadn't interfered. Now, the Church of Scientology is notoriously powerful in Hollywood. They have massive buildings on the most expensive blocks. And they have members in the highest places. So famous Scientologists, as you know, is Tom Cruise. They got John Travolta. And there's rumors that joining the church will help your career because Hollywood is cliquey like that. We have seen, unfortunately, church members protected for crimes that they should have been prosecuted for, like Danny Masterson. That took 20 years to prosecute him. Leah Remini, she has come out swinging. Good for her. You get him, girl. Get him, get him, get him. They took years from your life. You know, it's a great story that there's this larger-than-life boogeyman, this cult, but we actually see it in action with Isaac Hayes. And he wasn't just a member of the Church of Scientology. He was someone's husband. He was someone's father. And by all accounts, he was a cool guy that really loved being part of the South Park show. But when he was injured from a stroke, so he was in a diminished capacity, according to his son, these Scientology people were able to manipulate him to cut ties with people who were insulting the church, who were a threat to the church. And it wasn't the best thing for Isaac Hayes. It was the best thing for their church. And look, this is very common of cults. They'll offer you something beneficial and truth. They'll mix the truth with their own form of manipulation. And people will say in my comments, but these guys help me a lot. They help me a lot. But these are the people on the periphery. And the closer you get to the center, you get people who are more damaged by the organization. Look, if Dianetics, which is their scripture, their holy book, if that helps you, good. Read it online for free. You can do that now. They didn't have the option back in the day. So if that helps you, that's fine. Just don't put yourself where you can be controlled by these high influence groups. Now, because Hayes was so famous and so influential, they had a greater interest in controlling him. Also, a lot of people don't understand how high control groups work. And they think, well, you know, my friend went to a yoga retreat or went to this and it helped them, so I should get involved too. And it's just good all the way up. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You can always just take what they have to offer and leave what's going to hurt you. Just say, this is going to help me and that's going to hurt me. But they didn't all have all the same choices in 2006. We're actually very lucky to live when we live. Now, this alleged exploitation of Hayes by the Church of Scientology, this was public almost as soon as it happened, but nothing could be done to stop it. 2 years later, Isaac Hayes is dead from a stroke. Now, would he have died anyway? Maybe. Did the Scientology's policy of holistic medicine over modern medicine affect the outcome? Maybe. Did the stress of the tour contribute to his death? Maybe. But the publicity, the public awareness could do nothing for Hayes at the time. That's what's really sad. However, there may be a silver lining, like maybe a little bit. And this is the end of the Cracked article. This interviewer asks, reading the thread, it says you could come on as Chef's son. Would you want to do something like that? And his son says, I'm always open to that for sure. I mean, I'm a voice actor and my father and I have similar voices. Anything's possible. I'm open to the idea. But I would think even more along the lines of, with technology, with AI, that Chef himself could come back. If AI could bring Chef back, it will be worth all the trouble it has cost us and will cause us in the future. Check out my episodes on AI. Thank you all, and I will see you next week with fresh content. If you want more, if you do, you can subscribe to my Patreon, and we're always on there weekly with a podcast that people seem to enjoy. Plus, I will fill you in on all of this Sudoku drama that I'm in the middle of.